actually like change, and I get excited about change, but that wasn't always the case. Have you ever noticed that some people don't really like dealing with change? It seems that it's, especially if it wasn't their idea, they don't like it. But change is actually good. Change is underrated. Change has got a bad name. How can you really grow if you never change? Sometimes change is really scary. But I have found that overcoming that fear is the most broadening thing in the world if you make yourself do it. There was a time when I was growing up here in Marion and going to Linn-Mar that I would have rather faked a deathly illness than speak in front of any group. And speaking to a newspaper reporter, I would have lost 2 nights of sleep at least over doing something like that. Well, those are changes that I've had to make in my life. Without change, the game of women's basketball would never have grown into what it is today, nor I with it. I deal with change all the time. In fact, my team changes its personnel every year. Think about that. We change our complexion every season. Every year I welcome 25%, a new freshman class. 25% of our roster is brand new every single year. Is that uncomfortable? It can be, because it requires work. I have to get to know those players. I have to find out what motivates them, what gets them excited about playing basketball. I have to teach them all new fundamentals the way I want them to be taught. I have to teach them about the values of being a women's basketball player at Iowa's and what our mission of our team is. Would it be easier to keep the players that we have every year and not have to reteach these lessons? Absolutely. But for one thing, it's not going to happen. And for another thing, I found it would probably get pretty boring. You see, I have learned to embrace change because I found that every time I go with change, it teaches me something. Every place I travel to, I find a new treasure. Every time I welcome a new woman on my basketball team, I learn something from that person. Once I realized that change was there for a purpose and that change can teach me something, instead of being resentful because something is changing, I've learned to embrace the change. I challenge you the next time that you find yourself in a situation where something is new or something is different and you are dealing with change and you don't like it, just stop and ask yourself this: what can I learn from this? What can I learn from this? Those 6 words will turn dealing with change from a negative experience to a positive experience. Change is inevitable, and once we learn to welcome it, we enjoy it, we look forward to it. When I was 24 years old, I made my biggest change in my professional life. I went from a business degree major employed in an advertising agency to becoming the head women's basketball coach at the St. Ambrose University. That change has allowed me to become something that even when I wouldn't have even dared to dream about when I lived here in Marion. The willingness to change allows you to turn a weakness into a strength. Think about it. Why would you live with a weakness when it's within your power to remedy it? More and more, I realize that change is really the heart of being a good teacher. I try to make my players unafraid of it, from both a basketball and a personal standpoint. Let's say I have a player that's weak going to her left. I have to make sure that by tournament time that she can go left. We drag our players on excursions even if they don't want to go. When we took our team last year to the Virgin Islands to compete in a Thanksgiving tournament, some would rather stay on top of the catamaran than get into the water. But when they got the feel for how to breathe through the snorkel under the water, they loved the beautiful sights that they got to see. When we were in Alaska, many of our players wanted to stay in the nice warm hotel instead of going dog sledding. But that ride was among the highlights of winning the Alaskan Shootout. Our players need to be dragged out of their comfort zone on the basketball court. Otherwise, they fall into a rut. They all have strengths and weaknesses, and they tend to want to play to their strengths. Naturally, we all do. And if I don't shake them out of their routine, they'll never learn and they'll never develop their full game.